Good afternoon, guys. How's it going?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Um, so as we're getting ready, feel free to grab some slices of pizza if you haven't, and see. We'll get started. Really quick before I hand the mic over, my name is Matthias. You see a couple new familiar faces, so you may not know me, but I'm the outreach director here, and I help host these events. Also with the amazing help of our staff, specifically Kendra, who gets all of the pizza and gets the live stream set up, so thank you, Kendra. If you would like to see our Friday Tech Talks in the future, and you can't make it here, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. We upload all of our talks, and we also stream them live, so this will be going live right now. And it's every Friday at 1 p.m. So, also, just a little bit about our school. This is the Tech Academy, and we're a programming boot camp. So we take folks who have little to no experience in programming and help them learn the whole software development process and some very specific skill sets as well, like different languages. And if you actually have any questions about our school, feel free to come up to me and we can talk about it a little bit. I'd be happy to help you understand more. Lastly, we do have a brief survey right under your chairs. So it kind of helps us curate, possible events for all of you. And also, if you have any questions, you can leave them on there. But yeah, without further ado, Jeff Morris, everyone.
Hello. I may introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey Morris. I work for Triad Technology Group. We're a local recruiting firm here in Portland, Oregon. I've been in the industry for 12 years, specifically doing IT recruiting. So that's everything from low-level support all the way up to director executive level and everything in between, including software engineering. A lot of what I'm going to go over today applies to really any industry. Although I did create some specifics that are geared towards software engineering and how you can leverage your education, whether it be from a traditional university or these radical boot camps, it can all apply the same way. If you have questions during my talk, feel free to interrupt and just ask away rather than leaving until the end, because I feel like sometimes you forget what you want to ask. I'm going to cover a lot of information. It's kind of broken up into sections. The first thing I'm going to go over is basically Resume 411, how to do it the proper way. There's a lot of information on the web, and there's a lot of ways to do it, but there is a very simple method that works regardless of your level, whether you're entry level, at the professional level, 5, 10 years of experience, or you're seeking those higher end positions. It doesn't matter. You can still use the same approach, and that's what I'm going to go over first. And then I'll break into how you can use your training, education, and network to find a job. And then I'll add some other things at the end that are kind of important, kind of lose everything together. But that's where I'd like to start. I didn't create a specific resume, but I'm going to show it to you guys afterwards, which deals with using boot camp and or potentially a CS program on your resume, and you can use it as a template. For today, I brought my own personal resume to use as an example. I'll pass that around, but just understand that it's the format that I want you to stay focused on, because that's what's important. So, industry standard for the time a manager looks at a resume is 7 seconds, 7.4 seconds. But that is the reality. Most people are going to scan through your resume quickly. They're looking for very specific projects, keywords, or overall experience. That's the only time you get 7 seconds. Nobody prints resumes anymore, so they're going to be viewing it on a computer anyways, and it's easy to scroll down. But a good rule of thumb, regardless of if you have 1 year, or 10 years, or 20 years of experience, is 2 pages, because it's pretty concise. And that's the important part. It's a simple layout with very clearly marked sections and headers. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't want to use colors. You don't want to put a picture. You don't want to have embedded certification information. Any of that distracts from the content. The content is what you're trying to get across. You can put certifications at the bottom, or just your education, that's sufficient. There's no need to put anything super fancy because all that's really going to do is distract from the content you're trying to get across. One key thing that I've found is people either use periods here and there or not at all. You either use punctuation everywhere or not at all. I typically never use punctuation, only in the mid of the sentence to avoid anything run-on, to allow your brain to be able to split up the sentences, or maybe you're trying to put together multiple text skills in a row. I might list them out here where I talk about the applicant tracking systems I've used. I'll use commas, but I do not end it with a period. That's how I prefer it, but again, it's consistency and flow. If you do one thing in one place, you need to repeat it throughout the entire resume. That's attention to detail, and people look for that. If I see spelling errors on a resume, I'm like, this guy's gonna be documenting, his code. Is this how he documents? This is his presentation to me. So, really important that you're gonna have a couple sets of eyes on your resume. Friends, family, maybe your teacher here at the Tech Academy. Those are all great resources to review your resume before you go public. I would say at least 2 people, because everybody's going to have a fresh set of eyes, and you're going to be looking at this a lot, and it's going to get really old to you really fast. So having an extra set of eyes, just a fresh look at it, is going to be incredibly helpful. So something to keep in mind. I say this, but you want to aim for a perfect resume, and that's what I'm talking about, this synergy. Everything's the same. You follow the same pattern throughout. It's consistent. Format. This is key, especially if you're applying for jobs online, is you're going to want docx, word-friendly format, and a PDF. You could go PDF, but you don't absolutely have to. You absolutely have to go docx or RTF, because all applicant tracking systems parse resumes. They don't use them. They just grab the data from them and put them in their system. PDF does not play friendly with those types of parsing systems. Word does. So whenever you upload your resume to any type of online application, you want to make sure you're using some type of Word document. I just say docx because that's pretty standardized with all the newer versions, including Office 365. Another key thing I see a lot is storytelling, where people use their resume to tell a story about the project or their successes. That's fine. Save that for the interview. This is your time to sell yourself. You want to keep it very concise, but detailed from a technical perspective. So avoid using any type of first-person language. I, me, we. The other thing, and a caveat to that, is focusing on your individual accomplishment versus what you did as a team. Because when you talk about, we implemented this new software feature that improved the API's runtime, okay? When you say we, I don't know how much you were involved. Did you do the work, or were you just given a couple of the programming tasks and there's somebody else who actually did the design work? And I'm going to ask that during an interview. So if I see any type of words like assisted, our team, anything like that, I'm immediately concerned. Did this person really do the big aspects of the project, or were they just doing the small tasks? So make sure you focus on what you did, not what your team did. Now you can talk about a team project, but the focus is what you contributed, okay? This is a lot of information I'm going to go through, but I'm going to have this available afterwards that you guys can take home and review everything that I'm going over, okay? I went over the images and fonts, and I know this looks really plain, and that's okay, because again, you get 7 seconds for somebody to look at this. So what I'm going to look at, let's say I have a job order, okay, I'm just going to call it a .NET engineer, and it's working on desktop applications. So I'm looking for WPF, data binding, things along those lines. I'm going to scan through that quickly and look for, did they mention their summary? Okay, it's in the skills section. Well, if it's in the skills section, it needs to be in the body of the resume. Because a lot of times people that they're familiar with the skill set, but they've never actually used it on the job. And that's a very big difference to me. So I want to ensure that I see some of that project experience in the descriptions themselves. Okay. This is the basic format. I'm going to write it on the board, but it's simplicity. Again, I can't hit on that enough. Just keep it simple, and you can be as detailed as you want in your bullet points, but again, avoid storytelling. So an example would be, I'll pick apart my own bullet point here. Manage a recruiting team in the end-to-end IT recruiting process from sourcing and screening to offer negotiation for a wide range of IT requisitions. So I cover a lot of details there, but in a concise way. I don't go into heavy amounts of detail. Manage a recruiting team that varies in size from 2 to 6 people, from everything from the sourcing to the strategy implementations to the screening of candidates and peer reviews and mentoring my team. And we work on a lot of different software projects from BAs to PMs to engineers, all the way down to the help desk people that are helping to ensure that these applications are available for the rest of the team. That's storytelling. That detail is not necessary. I can explain that in an interview if they ask me specifics about that. But for all intents and purposes on the resume, I want to stick to the meat of the point I'm trying to get across. So I'm going to write up kind of the layout. Now, due to security reasons, I do not feel it's appropriate to put your full address on your resume. It's not necessary. The manager doesn't need to know your home address. Where you live is sufficient. You know, I put Portland, Oregon in my zip code. That's a pretty good idea of where I'm at. You know, and as a manager, if my job's in Vancouver, Washington, and this person lives in Hillsborough, you know, it's at a commute that somebody's going to be able to maintain for the long term. By the way, everybody who's remote, that's like an hour and a half commute one way, and if there's an accident, it's a lot longer than that. That's going to be a concern. So that's why it's important that you do put your at least location on your resume. So you'd have your name here, your location, so PDX, Oregon, and then your contact information. Now, this is a trick. If you're going to post your resume online and you don't want everybody having your personal contact information, create a Google account for your job search. Jeffrey Morris looking for work at gmail.com. And then create a Google Voice number with that email. And you can do some slick things with Google Voice. You can forward everything to your existing phone number. You can create a different ringtone so you know when you hear that ringtone, oh, you know, that's somebody calling me about a potential job. And then they don't have your private contact information. Because if you've had the same email for 15 years, are you going to want 100 recruiters having that information and bombarding you day in, day out later on? Again, totally up to you, but just a bit of advice, use Google. So I got my phone number here.
Quick question on the phone number.
Yep.
Is that something you could also maybe leave off if you're posting it online, just so that
Yeah.
and include it on a cover letter?
You certainly can. You can not disclose your phone number, only have an email, and then that way you can kind of screen the jobs people send you. And if something looks exciting, then you can release your phone number. That's completely okay. I guess it kind of depends on your level, not desperation, but like how quickly do you want to find work? If you know are going to treat it like a job, it's probably important that you have a phone number because it just makes it easier for people to be able to get in touch with you. Again, that's a personal decision, but there are a lot of job seekers who will only put their email address. But then it takes me an extra few days to coordinate a call with them, and in that few day time period, I might have 2 jobs that have closed. So that's the only issue with leaving your phone number off is it just creates a longer timeline from initial contact to actually being able to get you interviews. Okay, good question. And then email address. So that's the top of the resume. You can put your full legal name if you want. I recommend putting the name you go by. Okay, my name's Jeffrey. My friends call me Jeff, but I introduce myself as Jeffrey, so I put Jeffrey on my resume. Okay. And then we're going to have professional summary. That's going to be 3 to 5 bullet points, okay, that are specific to either the job you're applying to or generalized. So an example is I lead with my overall experience. I have 12 years in IT recruiting in many different industries with a track record of finding hard to find candidates for direct hire and contract positions utilizing advanced sourcing techniques. It's basically what I do all day. That's my lead sentence. Okay, so as an engineer, you might want to say, boot camp trained in advanced level Ruby utilizing Rails framework with some native mobile application development background. That would be a good lead sentence. If that's what you guys studied, that's what you're trying to leverage in your job, lead with that. And then your follow-up bullet points could be about a specific project or about the design patterns, or maybe it's just your software philosophy. I am a nerd when it comes to documentation. From end to end, I want to ensure that if I leave behind my code, somebody else can pick up right where I left off. That would be an appropriate bullet point, okay? Then we go into the skills section, which typically for engineers, it's just going to be technical skills. So we'll have software, database. You can cut it up into different sections too, like source control, CI/CD, and then maybe the other section would just have like Microsoft Office, Salesforce, random things you had to use in your job. But software would be C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, Bash, Shell. I know those are scripting languages, but you could still throw them under software. Database would be SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, and then source control, Git. There's a bunch out there, Jenkins, and then CI/CD would be any of the DevOps type tools for deployment automation. That's just an example of how you would break down your tech skills section. For me, I'm not a software engineer. My breadth of knowledge is very wide, but not very deep. So I know a lot about, or I know a little about a lot. So that's not something that I would specifically put on my resume, but I focus on what I use in my job, the tools that I use, and the tools that I used for my clients, because that's what is important for my industry, okay? And then we go into your actual experience. And again, following that same bolded titles, you have your company name, your job title, and dates. Always include the month and year, never just years. Typically when I see candidates put years on their resume, they're trying to cover a gap. They'll say 2017 to 2018, and then 2018 to 2019. They could have been at a job from December of 18 to January of 19, and I wouldn't know. So that's typically a red flag that somebody's trying to cover up something. If there's a gap, that's okay.
What if it's the same company but you just had different positions, but you don't know what exact year that you, what the exact month that you transitioned?
Guesstimate.
Okay, just put something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody, as far as reference checks are ever going to ask, what dates were they employed with this job title? All they're going to ask is, what dates were you employed at this company? So here, because I've been with Triad for almost 9 years, I started out as a lead recruiter, and then I have the dates, and I knew when I was promoted, so I was able to put that, but you could guess it. It was around summer, probably July. That's okay. Never guesstimate on your actual dates of employment with the employer. And then, so I have my overall dates, November 2010 to present, and then I have the dates next to my titles broken down. Okay. In fact, I'm just going to pass this around, and I'll share this afterwards. I'll send it to all of you guys who want it. And then you can use this as a template to follow for your own resume, okay? Just start over here.
Just backtracking a little bit to the header. For technical group, technical applications, is it okay, or would you recommend including things like your LinkedIn, your GitHub, your portfolio website?
Yeah, certainly. I most certainly would. It depends on how discoverable you want it. And I was going to hit on the coding portfolio at the end, but I'm going to skip to that right now. So you could have phone number, email, LinkedIn, and keep in mind the tail end of your LinkedIn URL can be changed. Most people know that, but if you don't, change it to something like mine's Jeffrey T. Morris. It's my full name. LinkedIn.com/Jeffrey T. Morris. You can change that to whatever you want. Make it short and easy so that people typing it out, it's fairly simple. Same thing with your GitHub or Stack Overflow. I would say if in the coding world, I would recommend GitHub, but I know Stack Overflow, it's easier to do projects together with strangers and work on things and learn from other people. From what I've learned, so either one is okay, but if you're going to show your code to a prospective employer, GitHub is where you should have it, because depending on what machine they're running, the virtual environment, whatever, they'll be able to look at it. Okay. And I'm just going to hit on that since you brought it up. Start developing your portfolio as soon as possible, especially if you're looking to be in software development and engineering. People want to see what you're capable of. And it doesn't have to be something that you've done in a professional setting. Let's say you have no professional experience and all you have is what you've learned at the Tech Academy. Ask if you can use some of the projects you've worked on at the Tech Academy, if you can use those on your account. I'm sure that's okay. I'm not positive on that.
Right, it is okay. For
Okay.
the most part. Question though, what if someone is stuck on getting a job? They don't. Basically, employers are saying that they don't have enough experience. Would freelancing be a viable option for a little while? Say on companies like job sites like Fiverr, would that be an option to continue building the experience points until they can land a full-time job?
That is an option only if you're able to use that code. Because if you're able to use that code, then you can build up your portfolio. Because people are going to look at the freelance experience and be like, well, he hasn't been in a real professional SDLC environment where we have defined agile teams and we have deliverables that are backed by hundreds of millions of dollars. They're going to say, you probably wouldn't be able to work in that type of team. Whereas if you avoid just saying the freelance stuff and saying, look at the portfolio of work I have, you're avoiding that topic completely. I think that's a great point you bring up.
Yeah, because I work with students and sometimes I would recommend that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great recommendation if they can use that code.
Okay.
Because sometimes you'll have to sign an NDA, and you're not going to be able to share that or talk about it. And if you're just starting out, that's probably not a project you want to take on, because then you can't share and talk about it. If you're a professional and you've been doing this for a long time, sure, why not? If it pays well. GitHub and coding portfolios. So many companies will ask for code samples, will ask about past projects, and that's why it's key to start building that. Think of a digital artist. They're going to have a portfolio to show a prospective employer how good they are at taking requirements and making brilliant artwork for brilliant marketing campaigns. It's the same thing for software. Can you take our requirements and make something work within the time frame and the money costs that we have? They're going to want to see that you've done that in the past, or at least that you're comfortable with the concepts. And I'll kind of round it out real quick. Is the actually, I'm going to hit that at the end. I think it's more important I stay on the resume for now. Did I hit everybody's questions?
Yep.
Okay. So professional experience. This is where you can kind of get carried away a little bit, and that's okay. 3 to 7 bullet points per job is a pretty good barometer as far as where you should be content-wise. However, if you've been at the same company for 10 years, you're probably going to have a little bit more content than that. And you could either split it up into projects that you've worked on. So you might have, the Tech Academy project, 5 bullet points. Boot Camp project, 5 bullet points. ABC campaign project, 5 bullet points. You could split it up based on project, or just not split it up in project and just overall content. The thing you want to avoid is taking up an entire page with one job. You want to have it broken up because people are not going to scan all the way through it. There needs to be a break. And whether it's page break to page number 2, there's got to be a break because if you have 25 bullet points long, people are going to lose where they're at reading. They're not even going to bother scanning through it. It's too long-winded. It's too wordy. I've heard a lot of those phrases before. And then at the bottom, after your professional experience, you'll have education. Now that depends. Okay, let's say you're fresh out of high school, you're going to code academy, you're going to school. You're going to want to leverage your education. So education is actually going to be between tech skills and experience at the top of the resume. Okay, but if you have a few years of experience, you're not going to leverage your education as much. You're going to leverage your experience. You want to have that at the bottom of the resume. And then I'm going to break up because I think it's really key with the Tech Academy to kind of go over the education section. Whether it's at the top or the bottom, this is the flow and format. So we have the Tech Academy, okay? And then the name of the program. I'm assuming there's names of programs,
Different boot camps.
different boot camps,
Yeah.
okay?
Python, C#, software developer.
And would you typically take multiple boot camps or one?
It depends. I mean, there's one that includes everything. One that maybe is just specific to Python. One that's
Okay.
just specific to C#.
There are
Okay.
a couple of basics that everyone takes up, such as HTML, CSS, or software development overview and stuff like that.
Okay, so that's how you would break it up. And in each, and specialized boot camps, let's say the Python one, do you have a development project you work on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you want to talk about. So let's say you took, just for example, 2 boot camps. You took the general one, so I would call it SDLC, and then I would have a short learning,
Real quick, SDLC stands for what again?
software development lifecycle.
Lifecycle.
So when you start at the very beginning, you're asking users questions to get what they want out of the application. That's the requirements gathering phase. And then once the requirements are gathered, they need to be taken from a functional standpoint, a dude telling you what he wants, to a technical standpoint, how can we do this with code? And then after that, you do the coding. It gets more complicated depending on the methodology you're using to actually do the design work. And then you have delivery and implementation and post-implementation support.
We actually do have something called a live project at the end of all boot camps, which is where they work on an actual product for a company.
Sweet.
But how would you put that up there?
Yeah, so let's just say you have the general thing that everybody goes through. So I'd have a blurb about that. And then I would have, I'm going to pick on Python. We'll do the Python boot camp. So the Python boot camp. And then you would lead with the technologies. So obviously the language Python, so you can repeat that again. And then Python framework,
Django.
Django. The D is silent. And you list the technologies. And then you have a bullet point that talked about the project.
If we were going to, just touching on some of the portfolio stuff again, using some of the projects from here, would you say to just include the projects with the education then instead? Or would you have a separate section where there's programming projects and at the end, rather than including those projects on the education part. You're just kind of, here's the boot camp, here's what I went through.
This, I would, it depends. So like, if you're, let's say you're fresh, you don't have any professional experience, you just have the boot camp, you're gonna wanna have everything under education. Okay? You don't wanna have education and then projects, because technically it's part of the education.
Okay.
And that's, you're trying to trick your audience, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
However, let's say you talk about the project, designed, developed, and implemented a web-based calculator, and then you would have a link to your GitHub with that project. Okay.
On the resume.
On the
You have
resume, hyperlink, so they can just click it and look at your code right there.
Do they, so just because we were touching on them only looking at it for about 7 seconds, how often are they clicking links off of your resume?
That's a good point. That's what I'm going to talk about at the end as far as how you can target companies. A large company like Nike is not going to do that. They have tools that go through the resume and look for certain words. If those words hit, it goes to a recruiter. If the recruiter likes what he sees, he calls the person. Okay? But a startup or a small company that maybe doesn't have the amount of money or can offer as attractive packages as a large company, it's going to look at those details. They're going to see, like, is this kid capable? I mean, he's definitely eager, because eagerness is more important than experience to a startup. Like, if this kid's hungry and he's eager and we can teach him and he wants to hit the ground running, and we can hire him for 40 or 50K versus a 100K guy and train him up. And then on the flip side, that kid is getting a year of experience, which he can then take and leverage to get twice as much pay. I'm going to hit on that a little bit more in detail, but that's an example. Certain companies are not going to care about your links. They're not going to care about your projects. They want to see the professional experience. If you don't have it, they don't care.
Would it be beneficial then to have separate resumes, ones that have links and ones that maybe don't?
Yes. So you should have a couple different iterations of your resume, and you should change the professional summary to fit the job you're applying to. If you learned C# and Python, and you're applying for a .NET role, don't use your Python resume, use your .NET resume. For me, if I was going to apply for a role outside of Triad and it was a manager role, I'm going to use my manager resume. If it's just a recruiter role, then I'm going to use my senior headhunter resume. Okay, two different resumes that describe two different things for two different jobs. So education, projects, how you break that down in detail. And then under that, you would have your volunteer organizations maybe you're a part of, military experience. If you have served in the military, or have any military experience, list it. Unless you're dishonorably discharged, don't list it. But if you left on good terms, list that. People like a military background because it shows that you can follow orders, that you're professional, that you're methodical. Okay, I know a lot of project managers who've gotten jobs because they had military experience. Okay, was the hiring manager a U.S. vet? Potentially, or was it just the fact that they have managed projects in the military following very strict rules and regulations? It's hard to say, but I've seen it many, many times. Okay, so if you have it listed, I know that doesn't apply necessarily to software engineering, but I recently placed an engineer who had built, I don't want to describe too much of it, but he built an application used in the Afghanistan theater during his time in the U.S. Army. And that was used for inventory purposes. And it was used for like 10 years. He designed and developed it. I leveraged that for this particular company because they had contracts with the military. So that's a prime example of even though that didn't necessarily apply, it kind of did. That's a one-off situation though, so that obviously it's not going to apply to everyone here. And then, I do a lot of volunteering with the university, so I'm going to list that on my resume. I do resume boot camps, career search strategies, things along those lines to soon-to-be graduates. And I reached out to Eric here at the Tech Academy and said, hey, I'd love to volunteer if you guys need something. And then Mateus reached out to me. So, that's something I want to list on my resume because it's a sell point. And then other would be if you've worked on your own project. Maybe you've developed an application yourself on your free time. Maybe you've developed a web app, or not a web app, excuse me, a mobile app that you have on the App Store for free. Leverage that, sell that. Like, that's your own experience. It's something you've done yourself that you created. Show that off, because that could lead to an interview. Okay.
Since we're on the subject of experience, there are unfortunate cases once in a while where, say, a student has a felony in their past. In the case that happens, how would that student go about?
Be upfront about it.
Right.
Yeah, because you don't want to wait till the end of the process and then you're like, oh yeah, and I got an assault charge 3 years ago for something stupid.
Right. Well, then say, because just say that a student has done that, but then it keeps killing their interview process because they don't have enough experience. What do you suggest they do then?
They shouldn't even be interviewing. They should be upfront about it. And if they're upfront about it, the company's going to say, oh no, we can't do that. So he's getting too far along in the process when he tells them. He needs to be upfront.
Are you including that then in like a cover letter?
No. Never put it in
Through a
writing.
phone screen?
Never put it in writing. Ever. That's a verbal conversation. If they reach out to you, you apply to the job, they're interested, say, I'm really excited about the company, I know you guys do this and this. I want to be upfront, transparent. 4 years ago, I was homeless and I got a theft charge because I stole some food. I've past that point in my life now, but I want to be forward about it because I don't know if you have any HR policies that may unfortunately affect my employment here. Just be forward about it because it's going to come to light, and why do it at the end or in the middle of the process and waste everybody's time? If you have the big ones are like theft, harm against another, and drug charges. Like those three are the big ones, and those are typically going to be the felonies. You have anything assault, sexual related, you're pretty much SOL, unless you're going to do freelance work. That's just the reality of it. Do your best to try and get it expunged. That's all I can really comment on that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About okay, so I have multiple versions of my resume, and sometimes I end up with gaps because like there's a job that has nothing to do with software related
How
job.
long?
Like 6 months.
Okay, 3 to 6 months I don't really care about. If it's 6 months or longer, put personal sabbatical, consulting work. If it's longer than that, you typically do want to say what you were doing. So let's say you were working at the gas station. You do need to pay bills. You don't want people to know that. You can just put personal sabbatical. If the employer wants to ask about it, they will. Typically, they won't. Now, if it's 6 months, I probably wouldn't put anything. And if they ask about it, say, oh, during that time period, I was working to pay bills while I went to school. You always want to use what I call the outweigh technique, is give them a negative but a positive. So like, for example, in an interview, they ask you, do you have experience with C#? I don't have experience with C#, but I've trained in Java. The syntax is very similar, and I've done a lot of studying on C#, and I'm up to date with .NET Core, which I know they're going to be making a mandatory switch in September of this year to everybody using .NET. That's the outweigh technique. Okay? You tell them, no, I don't, but I've done my homework and I know what I'm talking about. Okay? And the same thing can be applied to, I was working at a gas station during that time, but I was a full-time student studying software engineering. And during that time, I worked on projects on my off hours after school, and you can look at my GitHub portfolio and review the projects that I've worked on while I was maintaining a full-time job and full-time school. Basically, you're just bragging how badass you are and how hard you work for what you have, but you're using that outweigh technique. So they forget about the gas station thing. That's irrelevant at that point. If it's a year, you really do want to put the reason. You know, personal sabbatical, stay-at-home father of newborn child, you know, medical reasons, family, things along those lines.
So you can literally state that right above the.
Yeah, you put personal sabbatical, you know, December 2017 to January 2018, travel to the East Coast in order to handle my mom's estate. It's completely okay.
I have a question. Wouldn't that be something that you would put more on a CV and not a resume?
If it's a gap longer than a year, I would recommend putting it on the resume before about it.
Okay.
And I'm going to hit on CVs too. So that's the resume stuff. Again, I think what I'll do is I'll put an example resume geared towards somebody coming out of the boot camp. So give me a little time on that, but next week I will provide a template for somebody, let's say, with no experience in just the boot camp. Okay, how would you do your resume? I'll write up something. It's going to be a mock. It's going to be an example. But I think it's something that everybody could probably take advantage of. Okay, I use my resume today as a template, but it doesn't quite apply from a career standpoint because it's two different industries. Okay, but the format and all the topics that I went over applies regardless of what you're doing. Okay. This is the bomb. This is the bomb I'm going to drop here. Experience outweighs education. That's just the truth. You can have a 4-year BSCS degree and no experience and have a hard time finding a job. Experience means more than education because you've been put through fires. You've had to deal with other people. So it is imperative that you try and get an internship or an entry-level job. And you should approach this and attack it while you're going to school. Okay? I'm sure the Tech Academy has some career resources, you know, that you want to take advantage of. But there's a lot of other things you can do. Okay, I'm going to go over that now.
Just so you know, we actually have a full-on job placement course. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
we're the part of the team.
Okay. Well, I'll just loosely touch on this since you guys have a whole entire course. That's awesome. Okay. So as I mentioned before, this is kind of what I was saying towards the end, is you want to target small startup companies. There's a lot of them, okay? They need talent. They don't have the capital to hire senior talent. They may not offer the best benefits. They may not have the best package. But what's more important to you at this point is getting the experience. Whether you have to take a pay cut, you have to take a hit, it's for a year. And that 1 year that you can establish yourself in a professional environment is going to save you in the long run, okay? And I've worked with startups personally, and I can tell you from personal experience that eagerness, hunger to learn outweighs experience, hands down. And there's multiple people that I have relationship with that I took out of school, placed at these startups, and now they work for Fortune 1000 companies making a lot of money. Okay, but they had to start somewhere, and where you start is a small company or a startup. Okay.
I actually have a question regarding that. So in areas like Seattle where a bunch of software developers were just recently laid off by, I believe it was Verizon, how would you still recommend going to startup? Because I'm just looking at it and noticing that it's a lot harder for some people to get jobs in that area because of that layoff.
I'm not familiar with the Seattle market as much as the Portland market, okay? But my rule of thumb is don't worry about your competition. That's irrelevant. Have confidence in yourself. And that's all you can do. And that really does make a difference. If you're timid, you're modest, and you don't feel like you can succeed, you will not succeed. It is a mind trick. If you're confident and you walk in that interview, not being arrogant, but confident, that could separate you from the guy who's laid off at Verizon, who's hiding in the back of the office, barely doing any work, getting paid a lot because that happens in big companies. Sometimes this guy might have 10 years of experience, but interview like crap. This kid has boot camp experience, but is hungry, eager, and confident. Again, that's going to depend on the hiring manager and the company, but I think at that point you really just need to be confident in yourself. And it's a numbers game, everyone. It is a numbers game, and I'm going to hit on that. Your job search is a full-time job. You should be applying to 5 to 10 jobs a day. And one thing to understand is our job descriptions are written as wish lists. That's the reality. They'll have 10 bullet points of requirements, but the reality, they'll take 2 or 3 of those bullet points and be happy with that. So it doesn't hurt to apply. Okay? Descriptions are written as a wish list, and the prospective employer may not be more flexible than you think. In other words, if you feel underqualified, apply anyways. If you already, my recommendation, and I know everybody hates Chrome as developers, but the autofill data is brilliant. So once you autofill one online application, it makes future application processes that much easier because you're not having to retype all the same stuff. You just use the autofill. It doesn't work all the time.
Yes, every single company makes you log in and get a login and password for whichever company they have and all that stuff. Really, it's having all these passwords for all these places.
Yeah, and that's where creating a Google account would help for your job search because then you can log. I'm not a Google, okay, I guess I'm a little bit of a Google fanboy, but it's just because it makes things easier, okay? Because if you log into Chrome with that Gmail account, it's going to auto-save all of those passwords and all those logins. You're not having to manually enter it into a password app. I know that there's a lot of clever applications now that will just, like Samsung Pass, if you use a Samsung device, will save passwords. I just use Chrome, and you can operate different iterations of Chrome, so I can have multiple emails signed into multiple Chromes with different things. So I have one for my private life, bill paying, all that jazz, and I have one for my professional life. Saved all my logins and passwords from that stuff, so I can completely separate. That's how I manage it personally, and it works brilliant. But you are right. Sometimes it will take you to a secure portal where whatever browser you're in is not going to be able to communicate with. And at that point, you just got to say, is it worth it?
Sometimes if you've applied for that one of the jobs before, but then you see a different job, you come back in there and log back in and say, oh, you've already applied before, they don't reject you.
Yeah, and that's when you go on LinkedIn and you find out who the HR person is or the recruiting manager, and then you send them a note. You don't have to pay for LinkedIn. You can send people connection invites. Make sure you leave a personal message. I saw this really exciting job at Columbia Sportswear. I applied, and then I saw another junior role open. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to apply to that second role, but I'm highly interested. Please take a look at my LinkedIn profile, my GitHub, and let me know if you'd like to set up a conversation. Now, they may read that, not get in touch with you, but accept your invite. As soon as they accept your invite, you have their contact information. A lot of people will keep their email public on LinkedIn. You can lock that down. Okay? My recommendation, though, when it comes to social media, keep your private profiles locked completely. If you leave any trace of your private life online, employers will look at that stuff, and then it will influence their decisions. So I have a Facebook page for my family and friends, but it is locked down. If you're not connected with me, you cannot see anything, except for my cover photo, which I then delete anybody who comments on it. Or just don't use a cover photo at all. So that's like an example. But with LinkedIn, you want it as open as possible. You want to make those connections. Okay. There's a lot of clever things that you can do with LinkedIn in order to make it more open and make you more accessible to potential recruiters or employers. The biggest thing is make changes. So if I make a change on my LinkedIn, even if it's changing like the smallest thing, I open a section and change the to A. It will pop up in their feeds as my profile has changed. So I will do this on a weekly basis. I will update and change something on on my LinkedIn in order for my 2,000 plus connections to see my profile on their feed. Call it personal marketing, but it's something that you can do to get more visibility to the people that you're connected with. I kind of went over the job search, 5 to 10 submissions. Where do you find the job? Where do you look for the jobs? I think that's an important thing to go over. LinkedIn is a good resource. It costs a lot of money to post a job on LinkedIn, $1,000 a month, I believe, was the last number. Okay, so only employers with big pockets are going to pay money to post a job on LinkedIn. Indeed, it's free. It works like Google. It's a search aggregator, so it filters the web for job postings. So that is a great resource. Anybody can post a job, even if it's on their private website, and it will pop up on Indeed. Okay, you can use keywords to search specific jobs that you're targeting. Ruby on Rails, JavaScript front end. You can use those keywords to find those specific jobs. Okay, my only recommendation is don't apply through Indeed. Find where the original job posting is. And typically, in the bottom right corner of the job posting, it will say original, and it will be hyperlinked. Click that, will take you to the company website. That's where you actually want to apply.
Why not through Indeed?
Because Indeed's communication system is garbage. It truly is. You'll get lost.
Meaning it doesn't necessarily get to them.
It sends an email, and it's just so vague. It's so easy to look over. Like somebody who's really busy, and let's say 500 people apply on Indeed, that's a lot to look through. I personally look at my career search page itself before I switch looking at Indeed. Okay, and it's very plain how they deliver these update emails. So I've used Indeed as a tool, and it is a great tool, but their outreach and communication is garbage. Craigslist. I know it's crazy, but it only costs $20 to post a job. So smaller companies will use Craigslist. Startups will use Craigslist. Okay. And then portlandtech.org. I'm sorry for everybody who's not in Oregon. I can't help you. But portlandtech.org is really good because it actually lists internships and entry-level engineer jobs. And you can sort by that. So if you go to the main page, on the left-hand side, in the breakdown column, it will say internships, junior level, senior, and then there's other breakdowns. That's a great resource.
Are those internships normally paid, or are they normally?
It depends. I would say 50% are paid, 50% are not. That's a personal discussion you got to have with yourself. I think unpaid internships is bullshit personally, but experience outweighs everything else. And if you're having a tough time getting the job to get the experience, then maybe taking out a loan to get through a few months of hardship while you take an unpaid internship is what you have to do. I hate to say that, but I just got to hit on the experience is more important than anything else. So if you need to take an unpaid internship to get it, do it. But that's a personal situation, you kind of have to be real what's possible for you. Other notes, then I'm done, all right, is professional references. If you don't have any experience, ask your teacher here, ask a peer, would you be my reference? Just make sure whatever professional references you choose to use are going to speak highly of you. It's been many times that I pick up the phone and call a reference, and they're like, oh yeah, don't touch that guy. I'm like, why are you using this person as a reference? So make sure that they're going to talk highly of you, okay? That's who you want to use as a reference. Name, relationship, how you know them, okay? Phone number and email. I will typically email somebody before I call them. I don't want to be too invasive. People have lives. So I'll email them, hey, I'm looking to do a reference check on Mateus, and when you have some free time, I'd love to connect. And they let me know, and then I set up that call. Okay, so make sure you include that information. Do not put your references on your resume. That's their personal contact information. You only want to show that when it's requested. So I have a separate document called professional references in there. 3. Not 2, not 1, not 8, 3. That's it. Ideally managers, ideally leads, somebody who's delegated to you. But if you can't, a peer is fine too. Okay. Cover letter. I'm just going to briefly touch on this. I told you guys about storytelling in the resume. The same thing goes with the cover letter. You should have an introduction paragraph, 1 to 3 sentences. Okay. 3 to 5, I would stick with 1 to 3 bullet points. The bullet points should be focused on what's in the job description. I'm looking for a .NET engineer with API development experience. .NET experience using RESTful web services. I've built over 15 APIs. That would be 1 bullet point. These bullet points, the introductory paragraph is you talking about your skills and your schooling. The bullet points are specific to the job you're applying to. You should change those every single job. Many places do not even request cover letters. You want to have one written out, but if it doesn't request it, don't give it. It's just an extra step and more time wasted. And then your exit paragraph, again, 1 to 2 sentences. This should be half a page. If you're writing 3, 4 paragraph cover letters, guaranteed it's not being read. They're going to look at your resume. The exit paragraph, 1 to 3 sentences, is basically just telling them about how your skills apply to the role and reinstating your interest in the job.
What about personal connection to, say, policies or projects that have been used in the past? Like, what would you want to touch upon how, like, the passion, like, not passion, but why they would want to work at that company?
Yeah, certainly. That would be a great exit. I know that you guys are into renewables. I have a passion for green energy. I have solar panels on top of my roof, and I am targeting organizations that share the same passion as me. That would be a brilliant thing to have. Okay. Have a thank you letter prepared, ready, template. Use the same one for everyone. Just change out the names and titles and things like that. Try and make your job application process easier by automating tasks, by creating templates that you can just plug and play different words in and make your job a little bit easier in the search itself. Thank you letters go a long way. Managers want to know that you're interested in accepting their job. If I have 2 great candidates, but one stated he really loved the company, loved the team, and loved the job and would accept the offer, I'm more inclined to extend the offer to that guy because I know he's going to accept. This other guy, I don't know. So there's a lot of risk.
That should be after the interview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
After the interview, you go home the day of. You send that thank you letter. If you can't, like let's say the interview's at 4, you get home at 6, you can send it the next day. My rule of thumb is don't wait for the concrete to set. You want to reinstate your interest in the role before you forget. Right? Maybe you're one of 6 interviews that day for the first one. That's why it's important to do the day of, even if it's the night of. And the thank you letter, just be genuine. Don't be wordy. 3, 4, 5 sentences. Be yourself in that. That's where you can talk in first person. That's where you can be a real human being. I really enjoyed meeting you, Todd. You're just a stand-up guy, really transparent. That's my style, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. I would hands down accept a job at your company if offered. Please let me know if you need any additional information or more information on my portfolio. Thanks, name, phone number, email. That's where you can kind of be yourself. Okay? That's really it. That's all the points I've covered. I have this written up, and I'm going to share it.
Share to Dana and I, because when we get to that, we'll help along with that.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. If you guys don't have any other questions, that's
I have one question. Is there a website I can go to that lists startup companies that are looking for programmers?
The only one that I know of locally is portlandtech.org.
Portlandtech.org.
Yeah.
Okay.
There used to be, it was called, roseflorist.org.
roseforest.org?
Yeah, but I haven't checked it in over a year, so don't check it. It's like roseflorist.org, and it was like a tech blog
Okay,
for the Portland area,
okay,
and they would list all the new companies starting out.
okay, so it's roseforest.org.
Yeah.
Okay.
Florist.
I'm curious, I have owned a business for the past 10 years, and so as far as like stating, like we talked about like the gaps in timeline, like employment and whatnot, how would you recommend going about like entering into your career, kind of leveraging in that business that isn't necessarily, it's not in the tech industry?
If you did anything tech related in that business, it's worth putting on a resume. Whether you create a website, you did the marketing campaigns, it's definitely anything that you can leverage that's related to technology or software, you definitely want to use that. Let's say you didn't, and all that was outsourced and you were just the business owner, because it was 10 years, you do want to have it on there, but you want to keep it brief, 2 to 5 bullet points. And you want to focus on accomplishments. Grew business 200% over the 10-year period, went from $100,000 to $1.2 million revenue in the time period of owning the business. That shows that you have the tenacity for success. So that's an example. Good question.
That's thank you. Just email somebody, LinkedIn message. How would you?
Preferably email. Most people who interview are going to give you their contact information and business card. If they don't, LinkedIn is an okay resource. A lot of times, your only connection is going to be HR. They're not technical. They know laws and regulations. They're not your advocate. Okay? Basically, just use HR in order to get in touch with the right people. So if you don't get the manager's contact information, send a thank you note to HR and just pray that they actually send it to them. And then try and find them on LinkedIn and send them the same thing. Anyone else? If you do have any follow-up questions, you can reach me on LinkedIn or anywhere else. I'm more than happy to accept any connections. If you see somebody in my connections that you're like, oh, I'd love to get into this company, I'll do a warm introduction. Okay? Although I'm focused in the Portland market, so everybody who's remote, not here, sorry. All right, well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.